Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to the next installment in my playthrough series of Absolute War. This is a summary of the fourth turn, the Russian turn of November-December 1941. And, well, they made a couple of attacks, or counterattacks, if you will. Here to the south of Leningrad, they actually performed two assaults. I should have, of course, removed all the markers, but I left them on to make it a bit more easily visible for you guys what I did and what happened. So they attacked here two assaults. They were pretty lucky with the card draws, which gave them an extra 2 strength points, and the Germans both times got 0. In an assault, you can get a certain result, which is called Assault Victorious, and then you'll get to attack again with the very same units and everything. The rules do specify pretty clearly that any major offensive in that zone is still in effect as well, but the Russians also drew a card which gave them 2 General Winter cards, which basically boils down to the fact that if it's winter, which it is now, they get 2 General Winter markers, which they can add. The other one was added a bit further to the south for another attack point. So they were pretty successful there. The Germans didn't really want to retreat because that would allow the Russians to score for that major offensive, but in the end I guess they should have. They could have retreated 2 spaces, because what actually happened now is they lost Panzer Army, because that army was on top of the 16th Army, and normally the top unit loses a step even if it happens twice, which is what happened now. If I'd placed them separately, maybe it might have ended differently, I have no idea. But anyway, they were on top, and I should have just retreated them, but I didn't really want to give up my position there close to Leningrad, so as to still threaten the city. But now I lost the Panzer Army, which of course is worse than what happened at Stalingrad, which was losing an infantry army. So yeah, anyway, it was a pretty eventful turn there. The Russians also attacked here between Moscow and Smolensk, and they were victorious there. They drove back the Germans. I believe this unit was there and had to retreat 2 zones, and so it ended up over there. Note that it could not have done this, because then in some it would have only retreated 1 zone, and you cannot zigzag. You really have to retreat 2 zones, which is what happened. So here they also had a major offensive, and it was successful, though, so they scored for it in the end. However, something that looked pretty feasible for the Russians the turn before was to cut off these German units from supply, the ones that are closest to Moscow. But on the German turn, they did manage to take the Valdai Hills, which makes it possible to still supply those Germans like that. But of course, if they should move into this area or that one, then the Germans will still be in big trouble. The final attack was here. The result was an attacker advance, but I looked it up and it appears that such an advance is always, how do you say that, optional. It's not obligatory, so I decided to remain in place so as not to place a gap, create a gap in the lines. And of course the Soviets received some reinforcements. Don't quite remember which ones. For instance, the fortified units came back as well. So yeah, that's where we are at the moment. The Germans have got 11 war status points, and the Russians 5. They scored for their major offensive card, but there was also still 1 major offensive on the map, because they didn't. Well, it's actually a good question. I guess I should score for that one too, because even though no, you have to really control it, I guess. And I left that control marker there to show that it was initially controlled by the Russians, but that doesn't actually have much meaning. So it's actually contested. That's the correct term in this game. So it's not controlled, so that's why that major offensive didn't score. and that's why they, well, so they got +2 because they scored for their, I believe it was their offensive card. They control both Moscow and Leningrad. They didn't score for their war status card because they obviously do not control Königsberg or Germany, which means any area in Germany. But they do still control Moscow and Leningrad, so they scored 2 for that. But they lost 1 point as well due to one failed major offensive up there in the north. So that pretty much summarizes this turn, and I believe the next turn is going to be the last turn in this Barbarossa scenario. I hope you've enjoyed watching, and see you on the next one.